Okay, so welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. And happy National Tree Week. My name's Charlie, and I am the Tree Warden Scheme Engagement Officer at the Tree Council, which is the national charity that brings everyone together for the love of trees. Before I introduce our guests, I'll start by introducing National Tree Week. So it started 50 years ago, following the Plant a Tree in 73 campaign, when Dutch elm disease was devastating our landscapes. And at the time, the Tree Council was founded by government to help focus on establishing and championing trees outside woodlands. And we became an independent charity a few years later. Ever since then, National Tree Week continued to mark the start of the winter planting season, and it's now Britain's biggest annual celebration of trees. It's not only about planting trees, but also about looking after them once they're in the ground and caring for the ones that are already growing and providing so many benefits for us all. So we're delighted that you can join us today. A huge thank you for everyone for getting involved in National Tree Week in some way. And a special big thank you to our amazing volunteer tree wardens and to our fantastic partners who work tirelessly for trees throughout the year. I'm really excited tonight to be joined by a fantastic group of young people who are rising to meet the challenges that our environment and our trees are facing. The horticulture, arboriculture, and conservation sectors are facing skills shortages, aging workforces, and a demand for skilled people who can protect and rebuild our natural systems. We hope that by sharing our experiences today, that we can inspire more people to join us and to continue the legacy of the Tree Council and other environmentalists for the next 50 years. So, on to the more exciting part of the evening. I'm delighted to invite our panel of inspiring young leaders who will be sharing their fascinating journeys and what drives them, how they got started in their careers, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Joining us this evening are Katie Jones, the Tree Council's Science and Action Research Officer, Harry Munt, our Senior Young Trees Ambassador, India Blake, Agroforestry Woodland Officer for the Forestry Commission, and Lucy Grabe-Watson, Chair and Founder of Ancient Woodlands UK. So if you've got any questions for us this evening, please do put them in the Q&A box and we'll answer them throughout the talk. But now I'm going to ask everyone to get comfortable as I hand over to each of our panelists to introduce themselves properly and share a bit about their backgrounds. So if we kick off with Katie, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, so great to be with you all. As Charlie said, my name is Katie Jones. I am Science and Action Research Officer at the Tree Council. I've been at the Tree Council for around 2 months now, so we'll give you a bit of a background to my career path so far and how I got here. So going back all the way to school, when I was at school, one of my favourite subjects was geography, and I've always really enjoyed learning about how the world works and all the sort of different physical processes that happen within our atmosphere and our oceans and on land. And I've always enjoyed being outside. So I knew I wanted to work in the environmental sector, but I didn't really know what in. So I decided to do physical geography as my undergraduate degree at the University of Manchester, as it was a sort of subject I really enjoyed and thought it would keep my options open. So yeah, when I graduated, I did a few different temporary jobs, and then eventually got an internship at a circular economy engineering company. During this time, I was also volunteering for Birmingham Greenpeace as their local media coordinator. So I was doing that around once a month. Yeah, after a few years of sort of working and finding it maybe a bit difficult to get into the roles I wanted to do, I decided to go back and do a master's degree. And given the thing that I really wanted was practical experience, I chose the Climate Change, Environment, Science and Policy course at King's College London, as one module was a practical placement in an environmental organisation, where I was assigned a 3-month internship at the Environmental Justice Foundation as part of the course. I also really wanted to develop my research skills, so chose the quantitative research pathway. It was actually second lockdown in COVID at this point. So I was going on my daily walks around where I lived in London at the time and was noticing that a lot of trees on the streets had been newly planted, but were often in quite bad shape. And as part of my master's course, I was also reading my local authority's net zero plan, and saw that street tree planting was used to account for a certain amount of carbon storage. So decided to explore this a bit more in my dissertation and sort of ask the question of how street trees can be relied upon to store a defined amount of carbon when they don't seem to be being maintained or are damaged or not reaching maturity. I I've always loved trees and being in green space, and I spent so much time sort of reading about them and assessing them that I just began to notice them everywhere I went. So that project really sort of kicked off my want to be in the space of researching and protecting trees and wanting everyone to be able to enjoy them and access them in the way that I could. So after my master's, I decided to focus a bit more in on the research and policy side and worked for an organisation that's focus was evidence-based policy making across lots of different subjects. So connecting researchers up with policymakers on topics like the environment, but also things like homelessness and the youth justice system. And then I moved back more into earth science policy and began working as policy officer at the Geological Society, working to communicate the value of geoscience in society and policy making, and also doing bits of outreach with young people. So teaching people where minerals come from, what materials we use in our everyday lives, and what's needed for the energy transition. So yeah, after 3 years there, I saw the role of Science and Action Research Officer at the Tree Council and just sort of felt like the idea of being able to do research again in the area I so enjoyed was a really exciting opportunity. So actually pretty new to the role. As I said, I started in September, but some of the projects I'm working on include our Tree Health Citizen Science project alongside DEFRA, which is the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, where we're evaluating the potential of our tree warden network to collect data for us on tree pests and diseases, and then also working with DEFRA and Forest Research, interviewing local authorities on how to support them with pests like oak processionary moth. Also get to do more general things like tree planting days in schools, which I absolutely love. So yeah, that's my journey so far.
Thank you, Katie. That was super interesting, and I'm quite ashamed that I didn't know all of that since I've been working with you since September. But really interesting. Thank you. Okay, so Harry, would you like to give us a bit about your background?
Yeah, hi everyone. My background, I suppose I became interested in nature teenager. I was attacked by a kestrel. Hear me out. I used to be a very big sort of goth emo kid, so everything was, of course, had to be black. And I went for a little detour on the way home from work with my big black jacket on, really windy up at the top of the hill. And the only thing I can think of is that I must have looked like a very large crow. And if you know anything about birds of prey, you know that there's one thing that they dislike more than anything else, and those are crows. And we call it mobbing, where a bird of prey or a corvid or a crow will fly at something and screech at it and try and scare it away. And these two beautiful kestrels came out of nowhere and still got the video somewhere, would fly at me. They turned at the last minute and then would sort of arc up and go away. And it was absolute chaos. I walked away from that thinking, what on earth has just happened? But at the same time, that's quite cool. Was lucky to realize this just before leaving to college. So I went to a very good college, studied a diploma in land and wildlife, we call it. It's like the proper practical application of all this stuff. So you learn how to use chainsaws. You become quite good with your species ID. You become good at talking to people. And I didn't really want to go to uni, didn't have a reason to. And I think it's so expensive and such a big commitment that if you're not sure, that's actually a reason in itself. So I went straight into work and worked some horrendous jobs in metal welding factories, delivering pizzas, all the other normal stuff that you do at that sort of age. And eventually worked my way into several roles as a ranger and with an ecological consultancy for a time. 2022, most importantly, I became an ambassador for the Tree Council and have been to number 10 Downing Street, Hampton Court, spoken at Wisley Gardens, incredible venues, incredible places. And I'm currently on, I won't call it a career break, but it's a break from full-time work. Discovered that when you work your way up, so many people I was speaking to would talk about, oh, when I was at uni, I met this person. When I was at uni, I did this. I sort of started to feel a bit left out, I guess. So at the moment, I'm studying a master's degree at the Eden Project down in Cornwall. And it is beautiful and it is fantastic. And I'm keeping myself busy by doing little freelance bits and lovely little events like this.
Thank you, Harry. That Kestrel story is so amazing. It could put a lot of people off, but I'm very glad it's put you on the path that you're on now. So, Lucy, would you like to give us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I also really enjoyed the Kestrel story. I was actually attacked by a kite once as well, and it's definitely left me with anxiety around kites now. So it seems to be a thing that they do. But I'm the founder and chair of Ancient Woodlands UK, which is it's a youth-led campaign for Ancient Woodlands. You might have seen us on Instagram. And we do a lot of stuff with young people and also offer volunteering opportunities and things. And we're working to change the law on ancient woodlands because they're not currently legally protected. So that's the thing that we're working towards. And that's something I've been doing for about 2 years, but I also work for the Woodland Trust alongside now as a project coordinator. And I've had other roles within the Woodland Trust. I was an assistant site manager, so that was more on the ground work. But I think I sort of got here through quite perhaps it was quite a surprising path. So I actually started I did an open university degree. I didn't go to uni in that way that a lot of other people do, a bit like what Harry said. And I worked alongside in tourism at first, doing tours around attractions and things. And then that got me into doing activity leading in the environmental sector. And from there, I sort of became a forest school leader and worked in schools quite a lot, which I really loved. And I think that together with quite a lot of sort of environmental campaigning I was doing unpaid on the ground, that sort of came together and then led to a bid for the Woodland Trust Igniting Innovation project, which some of you might have heard of. And that launched my career, I guess, in the more traditional conservation sector. And I think that really gave me a step into the charity sector. But I also really loved the jobs I had before then. So I think it's just good to know that there are other roles outdoors as well, maybe where you wouldn't look for them.
Yeah, thank you. It's really interesting to see everyone's different journeys. India, would you like to give us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. Can't believe I've got to follow all of that because they're really great stories and yeah, routes into careers. Mine first started after a bit of a change of heart. I originally went to college to study biology, chemistry, and maths with the plan of going into medical school. I had medical exams, entrance exams booked, that I actually then cancelled, took a year out, COVID hit, but still went on to university that September. And I headed down to Cornwall to the University of Exeter's campus down there to study an undergraduate in environmental science. My interest in agroforestry sparked then during my dissertation process, where I explored opportunities, motivations for agroforestry in Cornwall. I then went on straight after that to study a master's in agroforestry and food security at Bangor University up in North Wales. And research then sort of started focusing more on financial viability studies and modelling of different agroforestry systems. And during that dissertation process is when I applied for the job I'm working at as now, with the Forestry Commission as an agroforestry woodland officer down in the southeastern London region. So this work kind of focuses on delivering mostly the countryside stewardship grants, helping farmers integrate trees into their systems to enhance biodiversity, soil health, boost productivity. So there's sort of like a admin grant side of things, but also I'm really lucky to be able to help with sort of promotion and engagement. So I work closely with farm clusters, advisors, local communities. Just try and promote agroforestry as much as possible. I do really love that I get to work sort of more with farmers as well as just woodland owners and other landowners, because it's this part of the environmental sector that really interests me most, about sort of food and farming systems, how they can adapt for future volatile climates, become more holistic, how communities can better interact with where their food comes from, and above all, as it's National Tree Week, how trees can help achieve this through their multifaceted benefits socially, environmentally, and economically. Alongside my role at the Forestry Commission, I also run a non-profit organisation called Logging Off Club, which is all about spending more time away from our screens, getting back into nature, third spaces, building community and reconnecting ourselves with the world and the people around us. So that doesn't always involve trees, but we definitely use them and get outdoors and use them for their social benefits. And if that wasn't enough, I'm also about to embark on setting up my own private agroforestry consultancy as well, because I do miss the sort of creative side of things as well. So yeah, that's me.
Well, thank you so much. It's been super interesting just hearing everyone's stories and seeing all of the different routes into the green sector, and whether it's through trees or not. Thank you so much for sharing. So we're going to go on to some questions now. So what challenges have you guys faced when finding your feet in the environmental sector, and what kind of things did you do to overcome them? Should we start with India again, if you're ready?
Yeah, of course. I think the biggest challenge for me was finishing my undergraduate degree and thinking like that was it. I can now go and apply for jobs, get out there, start working. I was looking for like sustainability jobs. But unless it was a really competitive graduate job, which were like massively underpaid as well, all job adverts were like, oh, we'd need like this degree plus X amount of years experience in the sector. And I think that's quite common like across like all sectors. So that is when I made the choice to stay in education and specialize a bit further by studying a master's. But I think I was then just quite lucky that quite a niche role came up in the thing that I specialized in. But yeah, that I think it's a common thing. It's like, yeah, need the experience alongside it, but how are you going to get the experience if no jobs are offering it to you? So yeah.
Katie, so you went to do a master's after your degree. Is that a challenge you found as well?
Yeah, definitely. I was nodding along the whole time there when India was speaking. I think when I graduated, I found like from my undergrad initially, I found it really difficult to sort of figure out which direction to go in and the jobs that I could get with my current level of education and how much to retrain. And I think I found it hard with the level of experience sometimes required because I think I was struggling to find a job initially that felt like a relevant sort of positive step forward. So quite a lot of the time, um, I was sort of working full time in other roles that were completely sort of irrelevant from, being a receptionist to waitressing and all these types of things. Um, and I think when there's so much choice, it's difficult to know where to aim as well. But I think I was just going to say as well, in terms of the question and how I overcame it, one thing I found really useful was to always have something burning in the background that reminded me of, where I want to go to and that I want to be in the environmental sector. And that was through, as I mentioned in my intro, for example, volunteering through Birmingham Greenpeace, because I was their local media coordinator and I got free media training. And I think I was there once a month or something. So that was just sort of kept the motivation going. But it is really hard, and I think it's quite easy to become demotivated. So things like that really helped me.
Lucy, are there any challenges that you found and how you have overcome them?
Yeah, and I agree so much with what the others have said. And I think there's this expectation, especially around volunteering a lot sometimes. And I think it's hard if you're not financially in a position to do that, or you need to work full time. It can be very difficult. There's definitely an imbalance there, I think, sometimes between people who can afford to do that and those who can't. And I definitely face that, I think. And also same with education, like how long you can stay in education, depending on, if you need to finance your survival, essentially. So I think that was one of the main ones for me. And I think, yeah, like Katie said, I always had something in the background, like a campaign I was running, which was just really like what I love doing, and it just motivates me so much. So I didn't feel like, and it was also on my own time. I didn't have to show up somewhere else in working hours, at a given time. I could do it in my evenings, and it just made me really happy to do it. So I think that definitely did help me in the end. I guess following your passion in that sense, while balancing that with also paying your bills somehow, I think that's the challenging thing.
Yeah, definitely. And Harry?
Echoing again what the others say, especially India's about the not India, Lucy's about the finance side of thing. I think that was mine. It was sort of you go to uni or you're working, you're in full-time work, and it's very disheartening when all your mates go off somewhere and they're like living on their own with each other for the first time and having a great time. And you're going home at the end of every day at 5 p.m. and just showering and just having like the taste of metal in your mouth from the horrible, horrible place you've been at. Which again, I think, how did I get around that? I was lucky in that I started volunteering early, but again, I couldn't volunteer all the time. So it is making your own opportunities to a degree, like the others have said, having that project or that thing that you work on in the background, that eventually will introduce you to someone or something that can then springboard you out of it.
So, sort of on the back of that, we talked a bit about volunteering and being able to balance that. What do you think that organizations, either the ones that are offering the volunteering opportunities or the ones that are offering the job opportunities, can do to support young people wanting to get into a career? Lucy, do you want to jump off on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think paying opportunities is a really good one, even if it's a one-off or like a youth panel. I've been saying this to a few organizations I've been in touch with recently about, if you have a youth panel with young people, pay them because, you're using that expertise to inform your strategy. That's very high level. It deserves to be paid. And I think where it's not possible, like, I mean, with Ancient Ones UK, we don't have a lot of funding. And a lot of youth-led organizations are in that position where, unfortunately, because we're small and youth-led, it's very difficult to get the funding. But I then think we offer things like, references for those young people who've then volunteered with us, or training or tips, sharing the ways that, like this, sharing the ways that we've gotten into the sector. That's what we can offer. But I think bigger organizations who have the funding, it's about sharing that, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Harry?
There we go. Again, I'll echo that. I think I'm seeing not many, but more opportunities, I think, as becoming a casual ranger or a casual ecologist, these sort of 0 hour contracts, which can be tricky to fit in around work, but I think in some ways it can be better than just volunteering for nothing. Having someone or having a job you can apply for, and then when you're needed, you go and you do that paid work, but because it's 0 hours, you can in theory balance that around work. And if organizations can't offer that because of funding or whatever, I was blessed with a lovely team of volunteers earlier this year in spring. And if you can't pay them with money, just pay them back with connections and training. If there's any free training you can give them, if there's anything that you can give them to help them, that hands down is almost as valuable as the money. Maybe not in the short term, but it will certainly build up and pay back over time. So yeah, making it valuable and accepting that they're going to move on. I think some organizations get people and they hold on to them and expect them to be there. I think as an organization with volunteers, you want that volunteer to become excellent and go and leave and do something even more amazing. So yeah.
Yeah. So we've got a question from one of our audience about any advice for getting into sort of a ranger slash outdoor or practical role, as they're finding that the jobs are very competitive. Harry, do you want to take that one because you've got the experience there?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to just jump in.
Go on.
One thing that you can do is get your licenses, get your tickets. So what I mean by that is to use brush cutters, chainsaws, pesticides, wood chippers. You need to have a license to do it. And there's certain places like Sparsholt College down in Hampshire, Plumpton College, I think might offer something similar. But a lot of training organizations, bodies, they'll offer you training at a massively discounted or free price if you earn under a certain level. So early in your career, look up these sorts of things. And if you can go on a free course or a much cheaper course than when you're working, they will put you above the rest because that will be on the essential list. It'll be must have a chainsaw felling ticket, must have a brush cutter license. And the practical jobs, you don't always need the degree in the same way as the science. I got into it in theory knowing nothing because I had none of the pieces of paper, but because I got those tickets and ticked off the essentials, and could prove that I might not have it on paper, but I do know a few things, that puts you forward. So yeah, definitely look into that.
And I think for people looking to get their licenses and their tickets for things, there's sometimes funding that comes up from places like the Forestry Commission that you can look out for as well, that fund you for those courses. Katie, we'll go back to the advice for about what organisations can do for young people. Is there anything you think comes to mind?
Yeah, I was just agreeing with what the others said. I think that, well, personally, I think that we should avoid asking for sort of excessive knowledge and experience, because not everyone can afford to have a wealth of voluntary experience or to sort of prove themselves through formal academic pathways. And I think, like Lucy said, in practice, that could look like full-time and part-time positions that pay a reasonable living wage, more vocational training. But also one thing that I wanted to say is that I think it would be really nice to see more of a focus on and a value of traits like being hardworking and enthusiastic and curious. Um, Not only to give young people the opportunity to enter the sector, but also because it's hugely beneficial to the sector to have a workforce that's representative of society, because sort of who we are and where we come from and our stories all guides our interests and skills, and that's massively valuable.
Thank you. I think that's really true. You know, the soft skills, as they call them, are just as important as the pieces of paper that prove that you've got a degree. India, have you got anything for organisations about what they could do to help young people?
Yeah, much the same as what Katie said, actually, like not expecting X amount of years experience for an entry level job. And yet instead appreciate the enthusiasm, new ideas young people bring to businesses and organizations, and not to mention like innate tech skills that like Gen Z and below people have, having grown up surrounded by it. Um, and yeah, traineeships, paid internships, summer placements, apprenticeships, work shadowing schemes, um, degree apprenticeships as well, I think, would be something that a lot of organizations, especially like more like practical work, could offer. Forest Commission does the apprenticeship scheme, and lots of other private like forestry agencies do as well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So we've got a question here from one of our audience about if anyone's got any suggestions of environmental organisations that they've volunteered with that they think are sort of a good example of places that sort of can develop and appreciate skills of young people. Katie, if you were saying about Greenpeace.
Yeah, so it's a couple of years ago now, but as I said, was working full time, so didn't have much time to commit. But I was their local media coordinator, which basically means that you do the like press releases for your local group, and you can just completely do it in your own time. And the meetings, I think, were like I said, once a month, and I really like that as well because they give you free media training at the office in London and pay for all your travel and things like that. So that was really fortunate that I had that, and it's a sort of another skill that you can add to the bank for relatively low commitment. So I would recommend Greenpeace for volunteering, but also a lot of local groups are keen to have volunteers. So even if you don't have much time, just get in touch and see what's available. It might just give you a taster of what that sector's like.
Yeah, I would say as well with like local groups, they often are keen to have the skills like India said, you know, the tech skills, the social media skills that young people can bring to raise awareness of their cause and what they're doing in their local area that they might not have in their group already. Harry, have you got any suggestions for volunteering?
Not necessarily for ones where you're recognised as a young person per se. The ones I did around side work were citizen science things. So the British Trust for Ornithology, they've got things like bird track, webs counts, breeding bird surveys. Plant Life have got the National Plant Monitoring Scheme. So if you're really pressed for time and you need to be working full time, I'd recommend those, but they can be a bit less personable.
I think that's a really good point, though, the citizen science. There's so many projects out there in all different types of environmental sort of areas. And it's sort of a proof of your interests and knowledge and commitment as well. Lucy?
I'd say the main thing is the one that either you want to work for directly, because unfortunately a lot of charities do still prefer people who volunteer directly for them, or in the very specific skill. So like if you want to be in comms, make sure it's a volunteer comms role. And similarly for outdoors, there are a lot of working groups. I used to run some in my role at the Woodland Trust. and they're sort of maintaining your local nature reserve. And if you want to be a ranger, that is going to give you a lot of skills. And depending on the organization, they might also pay for tickets and things. So that could be a way in if that's what you're looking for. So I think it's just being very specific and also, yeah, doing it within the bounds of the time you've got available. So trying to do it strategically if there's a limit on that.
Yeah. India, you got any suggestions?
Yeah, I've volunteered with Forestry England, so like Forestry Commission, but the people that sort of manage the public forests. So each sort of area will have a local volunteering group, which they do like a whole host of different activities, and it's very like drop in, drop out, just take on what you can. And also there's CPRE, the countryside charity, do a lot of events. I think they've done like a few free hedge laying courses in my local area. But yeah, off the top of my head, those are probably two tree focused ones.
Nice, yeah. Keeping it on theme. So, moving on now to our next question. What sort of misconceptions do you think people have about working in the environmental sector? I'm sure you probably hear things from your like friends and family when you say what you do about what they think it is that we're all tree huggers and things. Katie, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sorry, that made me laugh because I feel like I've definitely heard that somewhere before. Not so much a misconception, I guess, but I think a real understated part of the environmental sector is just the range of jobs that are available to suit all different people. And I think that's a really brilliant thing about it. And whether you want to do practical work outside or whether you want to communicate science through art or do environmental policy or design wind turbines, there really is something for everyone. So I think that that's a part of the sector that maybe people don't appreciate enough, that it just spans so many different other sectors. I think, yeah, also another maybe misconception is that it's really competitive to get into, which in some areas it definitely is. But in general, I think there's a huge demand for skilled people and skilled young people and enthusiastic young people in the green sector. So yeah, there's like a real opportunity to have an exciting and varied career, I think.
Harry, any misconceptions that you've come across in your time in the role?
Yeah, quite a few. I was debating saying this one because it's a bit of a killjoy one, but just from experience, having seen a few people, few colleagues, and myself going into the sector, it's your passion. You love it. You will likely spend a lot of your free time outside, hiking, bird watching, whatever. Um, but it is also work, and I think I'm speaking more about the general public will often say, "Oh, you work outside. That's incredible." And it is, but it is still work and it is still hard and you won't love it all the time. You will have to work some uncomfortable hours probably at some point. You will have bad days and that's okay. That doesn't mean that you're meant for a different career and that you're not destined for this. I think that sometimes people go into it with the perspective that it's all going to be perfect and this is what I want to do. And a lot of it might be perfect, but a lot of bits also won't. So just bear that in mind and don't let it dishearten you if it's not always perfect all the time.
Yeah, I think that's really important to remember that a lot of people go into it because they're passionate, but then it's sometimes then hard to make the break between work and passion, and you can quickly find yourself sort of blurring the boundaries between the two. Lucy, any misconceptions you've come across?
Sorry, on my mic. But I was going to say, yeah, I think around working outdoors, I think somebody said this before, but yeah, not everybody is working outdoors who works in the environmental sector. I think most people are not. And a lot of people don't, yeah, necessarily even see the sites or the projects they're working on, but they're still doing really important work. I think that's really important. One sec, let me just.
India?
Yeah, much of the same really. Like, yeah, biggest misconception. about a lot of green careers is that you're outside all the time. I think I probably spend about 80% of my time behind a computer screen. That is slightly due to the nature of my role, and other jobs will be different. But yeah, being behind a computer is inevitable, I think, in most roles.
Yeah. Well, I think that, if there are people who are interested in the environment but don't see themselves being out all of the time, there's definitely still things that they can do. And that sort of brings me on to one of our next questions. Like how can other fields like science, policy, art, business, how can they come together and empower everyone, regardless of their career path, regardless of the fact they might not have said, I want to work in the environment sector, to play a part in environmental progress? Lucy, are you
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I think there's definitely something around all these things can, especially in the context of the climate crisis, art, these are the things that change people's minds, I think, and will lead people to take action a lot of the time. It's something they read or something that they've, a piece of art that they've seen. And I think it's so important that as young people we don't lose our passion for that just because it's often not paid. I mean, I write, I have a Substack, I write, I don't get paid for it at the moment, but it's still, and similarly with the campaigning, I still think it's important to hold on to that as well as all the other things that we do. And I see on Instagram so many great young artists, especially doing great things. And, that's really inspiring other people.
I think you're on mute, Charlie.
Oh, sorry. Katie, I think you touched a little bit on this before, this sort of intersection and how it can play a part.
Yeah, I think it's obviously a big question, but I think the environment is sort of inherently impacted by all these things. And I think in my mind, we should see environmental progress as sort of a complex web of factors rather than the environment as a completely separate entity. And that achieving this sustainable future that we all want needs to be like interdisciplinary, basically. I think my background is a bit more in policy. So from, I guess you mentioned science and policy, from that perspective, it's really important for environmental progress to have the channels of communication between the people producing the research and the people doing the policy making, because that leads to policies that are effective and based in evidence. And that's obviously really important when addressing these massive issues like climate change and the energy transition. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. India, got anything to add?
Yeah, I think science communication through art has the potential to be like a really, really powerful thing. So if you're an arty person that wants to start communicating on different environmental topics, I think at the minute we're going through such a massive change in the land-based sector. Like it's really turbulent times, and we really need like this increased social awareness for people to actually take action. And I think that art is a really powerful way to do this. But just generally, I work with a lot of people that don't have forestry, like in the forestry sector, which don't have forestry degrees. So there's definitely routes into different environmental sectors, even if your skills are placed elsewhere, because yeah, like in comms roles or, just like admin based roles, which still give you the experience of like working your way up and learning more practical skills. It's that like, yeah, definitely loads of opportunities there.
Yeah, definitely. And Harry, what do you think about the crossover?
Yeah, I think that kind of the second sentence from what I was harping on about a second ago, the environment sector is still a sector. Not everyone's going to be out there doing surveys and practical work. Who's going to be doing your admin? Who's going to be in the offices? Who's going to be cleaning the offices and the premises? A lot of practical work, you need to be quite mechanically minded. A lot of it's fixing the tractor that's broken down again. A lot of ecology work can be report writing. You need to be good at your literary for that. One of my colleagues moved from teaching over to this and copywriting from this, and she's now like an incredible educator who does lots of like ecological work on the side. So just like any other sector has got niches for all of these things. So does the environment. With things like BNG, I think there's going to be a big sort of, and carbon credits, there's going to be a big niche for financial stuff coming up in future as well.
Yeah, I think it's a super interesting time, and you see so many young people are interested and worried about the environment and climate, and even if they go into law, they could be an environmental lawyer, or as Katie said, designing wind turbines. It's there's definitely a niche for everyone. Um, so moving on to we've had a couple of questions, I think, about this as well, about any resources that people have used to find a job, figure out what career they want to go in, sort of any people that you've gone to for advice, websites, anything like that that you found useful when researching your careers. Katie, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I use things like National Careers Service, Green Careers Hub, STEM Learning, careers service at the school or college, anything like that. I also love LinkedIn because you can find people doing your absolute, dream role and then look back through their journey and see how they got there. Um, Another thing that I used to do would be go on Eventbrite and find free events in Birmingham or nearby in the climate and sustainability sector. Even if it was for people who already worked in the sector, I'd still go along and say, like, hi, I'm a student and I'm really interested, and just try and surround myself with people who worked in the sector and could basically give me advice and tips. So yeah, I think also websites like Open Learn online have loads of free courses across all sort of environmental and conservation topics. So I'd also recommend looking at those.
Yeah. India?
Yeah, also a massive fan of LinkedIn, despite my want and desires to not be on social media. But honestly, like, you can find so many opportunities and speak to people, find events, find jobs that people are recruiting for on there. So yeah, really good. And also, I like, employers definitely check that out. So, or as cringy as it is, like, do post about the stuff that you're doing. um Everyone knows your LinkedIn post is going to be cringe. Like, it's fine. Everyone just accepts it. But actually, for finding sort of like job websites that will list actual like jobs that are being recruited for, number one for me is definitely Countryside Job Service. That one's really great, and I think a charity as well. And then more for like the food system, like focused jobs, Routes to Work is a good one, spelled as in like tree root to work. So yeah, they'd be my top three.
Thank you. Harry, you got any resources?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, there's keeping an eye on the chat. There's been some great ones in there. TCV,
Yeah.
Conservation Volunteers. The Countryside Job Service has been my sort of holy Bible, because it's not just the jobs, it's the volunteering and the training. And the free events are so important when you're early in your career. I think that most of the early like commissions and bits of writing work and stuff that I got was just purely through word of mouth of people that I'd met. So definitely do that. And another one, which I guess is more the ecological side of it, CIEM, the Chartered Institute for Environmental and Ecological Management. They've got a really interesting, although under talked about, mentoring program when you can look up and get set up with a mentor who essentially you'll have regular meetings with, and they will help to guide you or maybe career questions that you're not quite qualified to talk about yet. If you're quite early in your career, that can be invaluable in deciding the direction that you go, what you do at uni, and just bouncing general questions off them. So I definitely recommend that as well.
Yeah. Lucy?
Definitely another vote for the Countryside Job Service. I check that all the time. And also, I think making a list of the places near you where you might want to work, if you're looking for outdoor work, for example, there will probably be a limited amount of places. So if you make a list of them and then check them regularly, because some smaller places won't be advertising on big platforms. And I still check places I've worked at in the past to see if, permanent jobs are coming up and things. And then it's quite boring, but keeping that spreadsheet definitely does make a difference in the long run, I think.
Yeah. I'm also a big LinkedIn fan, and every time I go to a conference or I'm in a meeting, I will be connecting with the people as soon as the meeting's over. And I think people are, I don't, I think people shouldn't be afraid. I think most of the people I've come across are very friendly and very willing to offer advice, guidance, and things like that. So I think don't be afraid to reach out to someone who is in your dream role and ask them how they got there and any tips and advice about that, because they might have opportunities they know about that aren't out there on the sort of internet and can sort of help you um, progress as well. So, sort of on the back of that, is there any advice that you would give to a young person wanting to get into the environment sector? Any tips or tricks apart from countryside job service? Katie, do we want to start?
Yeah, I guess my main bit of advice is there's so many routes into the sector. There's so many different things to try. Just try and put yourself out there. Try lots of different things, but try not to feel too overwhelmed or disheartened if you're not sure, what where you're supposed to be within the sector. I would also say try and develop skills in whichever job that you're in. So, regardless of whether it's immediately relevant, you could volunteer to sort of contribute to your organization's sustainability plan, which a lot of companies have now, offer to write reports, build up your confidence talking to people, or even putting recycling bins in at the pub you're working at. Like all of these things can help build up you as an employee. But yeah, over my sort of primary bit of advice is it can take time. So just everyone's on their own path.
Thank you. That's nice advice. India.
Yeah, similar sort of thing is that, um, well, forestry, for example, is quite a common career change route for people. So generally, even for new entrants to the sector, I think we're fairly open-minded about transferable skills, and in a lot of cases, you can learn a lot on the job. So just go for it. Apply for jobs that you don't think you're qualified for, because you actually might be. And yeah, even if it is a more entry level job, don't underestimate its ability to evolve and expand, especially if you sort of take all the opportunities available to you when you are in it. And yeah, as well, if you live in a city, I would say that like don't be put off by that. You can definitely still find a green career in cities too.
Lucy, got any tips or tricks?
Yeah, I think I'd echo what Katie said about trying lots of different things, and that sometimes will give you the opportunity to see what you like and you don't like. And then if you can focus on one area that you know you're really passionate about, and for me that was trees, but it might be something else for you, that can really help you to keep that focus. And then even if you're doing something else, like working, I mean, I was working in a pub at one point, or tourism, whatever it is, you still know that that's the direction you're going in. And I think if you hang on to that, that will make a huge difference, I think.
And Harry.
Um, Please look after yourselves. When you're working your way up, it can be so easy to sacrifice things for a sector or for a job or for an opportunity. And the thing which I lost a job before because I didn't look after my health enough. It is such a long-term investment that we all need to make in a sector where at the start you don't often get paid much. You are often quite burnt out and you're doing crazy hours in certain jobs. The job doesn't make you, the title doesn't make you. You can be an environmentalist and an ecologist working in retail or hospitality, and you will get there at some point, but only if you look after yourself. You are the asset, essentially.
Thank you, Harry. I think that's really important for people to hear. And again, that piece of advice for employers, you know, you're an important asset and they should be supporting you to look after yourself as well. So on a slightly more positive note, what are some of the highlights or the highlight that you've had so far working in this sector? Should we go back to you, Harry? Or do you need some time to think?
No, I've got one. I've got the last job that I did was with just a little local council. But going back to the beginning, the hill, the nature reserve, where that kestrel had a had a go at me. I volunteered there after then, in between school and jobs and stuff, on and off for about 6 years, and almost exactly a year ago now, got offered the first job there, I believe, in about 30 years, because I knew the ranger and the volunteers there really, really well. And it was like my dream job. Like, this was the place where it all started. This was the place where I went on all my walks. This is where I learned botany. This is where I learned ecology. This is where I networked with people. And I've now been given essentially a job that was created for me because I'd been around for so long and they needed more help. And the first day at work, where I walked the same route I'd walked for about 6 years, all throughout school and college, and working at the metal welding factory, working up there knowing I'm getting paid to be here now, that was a proper, like, I've made it moment. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Katie?
Yeah, mine's quite specific, but I guess a highlight for me was were doing outreach in the Science Futures tent at Glastonbury, teaching children and young people about minerals and the energy transition, and seeing sort of children holding minerals and looking at them through hand lenses was really brilliant. And sorry, just to add another one on, a general highlight is also the people that I get to work with, and sort of surrounded by really interesting people who are really interested in what they do and so full of knowledge. And I feel like that's a real highlight, just to be able to go into work and learn so much. So yeah.
Yeah, that's something I really love, is working with young people and going into schools and seeing them planting trees for the first time,
Yeah,
or
their
finding
faces
out,
like lighting up.
yeah, finding out that an oak tree comes from an acorn, and that's really special. Lucy, what's your highlight
Oh, it's
been?
so difficult. I think I have two. One is when I was a forest school leader, there was a robin, and I ended up training the robin. It would come and eat seed out of my hand, and then it would do it for younger and younger children. And in the end, it was eating the seed out of a 4-year-old's hand. And I think that was like, it was just such a cute experience. And for those children, I think it really changed their relationship to nature. And I think the other one is more around youth influencing policy. And we had a stakeholder consultation with Ancient Woodlands UK, and some people from quite major charities came. And I think us as young people chairing that meeting and having them around that table, that felt really good. It felt like, it is possible and we can influence policy.
That's really cool. India?
Yeah, mine's not like a specific moment like that, but that Robin story is so nice. It's more just my experience in sort of getting into the forestry sector. And although times are changing, this line of work is still predominantly male dominated, and people might feel apprehensive about that as women. But I received such a warm welcome into the forestry sector, not just sort of acceptance, but actually empowerment as a young woman. And my voice and ideas are not only heard, but I feel they're amplified. And I was given opportunities and a platform, which didn't feel tokenistic. So there we go.
That's really very encouraging, because it is a very male sector, isn't it? And I think a lot of the environment sector is still one of the most male dominated sectors in the UK, apart from farming. Um, so we've had a question about sort of the competitiveness of the job market in the environmental sector, and put specifically around sort of art creative roles in the sector. If anyone knows or has any idea, what's your feeling about the competitiveness of roles in the sector? Katie, do you wanna? You've searched for a job recently.
Yeah, not specifically for art or creative roles. I would say I've seen an increasing number of those roles recently. A lot of science communication through things like cartoons and infographics. So I'm not entirely sure on sort of the situation currently, but I can only imagine it would increase. But I don't know if any of the others have dealt with that directly.
Or generally sort of in the sector more generally, not necessarily arts related.
Okay. Um, yeah, I think when I was younger, I felt maybe that it was a bit more competitive than I do now, maybe because the sector's expanded so much. I think when I was younger, I was mainly looking at really specific jobs within local charities, which I think India mentioned earlier, don't come up very often. So I think in that sense, I found it to be quite competitive. Or I sort of felt like I had to move to London and I wasn't really sure if I wanted to do that at the time and things like that. But as I've got older and the sector's grown across things like engineering and software design and all of that sort of stuff, I think actually it's expanded to the point now where generally if you want a green career, there is space and demand for you.
India, have you got anything to add to that one?
I agree with the Katie's point about it feeling more competitive when I was younger, and I don't know if it's just if I was feeling like that because I hadn't been immersed in a job yet and like working with other people. So I mean, if it's you've had experience where you've applied for loads of jobs and not got anything, sometimes that's just the way it goes, and just like keep going at it's not you, because yeah, the sector is expanding, and yeah, I mean, sell yourself through transferable skills, volunteering, if you are able to do that, and yeah, I think there'll definitely be something. New jobs are coming out all the time.
Yeah, it's obviously a massively expanding sector in the UK, and as we've sort of discussed this evening, you could look for jobs that aren't necessarily in the big environmental NGOs that we've all heard of. You can look for smaller things and make it environmentally focused if that's what you're interested in. So I think that's really important to remember. So I've just been given the 2-minute warning, but I just wanted to ask a quick question, if people could keep their answers very short, about what gives people hope about the environment and climate action as young people who are sort of looking to the future and thinking, oh gosh, what's it going to be like? Lucy, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, I think young people are knowing that we're ready to change the systems that we have now, and that while that hasn't been the case in the past, we're ready and we're here to stand up for it.
Nice. Harry?
Events like this, the networking and the social aspect and the community of it is really, really important and needed sometimes, I think.
India?
Yeah, just know that you're making a change in the job that you're doing in your day-to-day life, and you might not feel like you're doing some massive, like amazing policy making changes. Like everyone doing their little bit will add up, and yeah.
And Katie?
I think things that give me hope are things like the increasing popularity of forest schools and topics of climate and sustainability into the mainstream curriculum, and hopefully that will continue to sort of encourage young people to protect the environment and see it as a place for them.
Definitely. I hope so. So that brings us to a close, and thank you so much to everyone who's joined us this evening. And I've seen all of the lovely messages in the chat, and we hope you've learned a lot about green careers and are able to take away some great advice from our panelists. Thank you to our panelists for joining us this evening and sharing your journeys into green careers. We've got a list of resources that we'll share with everyone, along with a recording of this talk in an email tomorrow. And coming up this week, it's still National Tree Week until Saturday. We've got 2 more talks. On Wednesday, the 26th, we have Trees in Unexpected Places with Harriet Ricks, John Stokes, and Paul Wood. And on Thursday, the 27th, we have Trees on Farms in conversation with Helen Browning, OBE, Guy Singh Watson, and Ben Norwood. And you can sign up for free via the links in the chat, on our website, and via the broadcast email tomorrow. And don't forget to check out our National Tree Week events map to discover some events near you and start volunteering. Thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic National Tree Week.